Welcome back to the Grow Your Nutrition Business podcast, powered by Healthy Steps Nutrition Mentoring. At HSN Mentoring, our mission is to empower people to take control of their health, one step at a time, so they can prevent and reverse chronic disease. HSN Mentoring provides a turnkey solution for gym owners and coaches to build, launch, and grow nutrition coaching programs. My name is Nicole Aucoin, and I'm the founder of Healthy Steps Nutrition, CrossFit HSN, and HSN Mentoring. In this podcast, we're going to teach you how to take one step at a time to build a successful nutrition program so that you can ultimately make a greater impact in your community. Today's podcast guest is one of my new friends, Mike Michalowicz. He is the author of Profit First and The Pumpkin Plan. He has a new book coming out January 2nd called All In. In this podcast today, we talk all about building engaging teams, having a team of thriving employees that are passionate. He talks about what he defines A, B, and C players, how to deal with an employee that's doing the bare minimum, how to get increased engagement and alignment with your employees. It is an incredible episode. I'm excited to go back and to listen to this one again. You're going to want to grab your notebook for this one. If you're a gym owner, a leader, or plan to build a team and want employees, this episode is for you. So excited for you to hear this episode with Mike Michalowicz, author of Profit First, The Pumpkin Plan, and his new book, All In. We will get to this episode right after this message. HSN Mentoring hosts a live event every year for gym owners and coaches. The theme of this event is Health Starts Inside of Your Gym, bridging the gap between fitness and healthcare and really empowering a healthier community through nutrition, fitness, and accountability. This event is a 2.5-day event. We bring in keynote speakers. We have breakout sessions, so you're not having to listen to the same sessions. You can pick the topic that you want to learn more about. Those breakout sessions are small group, intimate, so you get real-time feedback. It is an incredible opportunity to work on your business, not in your business. This is the third year that we're hosting it in Nashville, Tennessee. It is April 18th to the 20th, and Mike Michalowicz is going to be our opening keynote speaker. We only sell 160 tickets to this event. We are already 50% sold out. Prices for this event are going up at the end of November. So lock in your spot today. It is an incredible opportunity to learn and, most importantly, to connect with other gym owners and coaches who are all prioritizing health inside of their gyms. I hope to see you at our live event, the Gym Accelerator Summit in Nashville, Tennessee. All right, let's get to this episode with Mike Michalowicz. Mike Michalowicz, welcome back to the Grow Your Nutrition Business podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be back. Thanks for inviting me back.
You have a new book coming out, which we're going to take a deep dive in, but I'm just going to preface this. I know everyone's going to love this podcast and learn a little bit more about you virtually, but they are going to have an opportunity to connect with you in person because you are the opening keynote for our Gym Accelerator Summit next year in April in Nashville.
I cannot wait. I'm ready to go push up for push up versus anybody there and get my ass kicked.
But oh my gosh. All right. Challenge accepted.
Challenge accepted. Yeah, we should see who can do the most push-ups. And I'll probably be the first person out. But I can't wait. I can't wait for the event. I may not be able to bring that kind of strength, but I think I'm going to bring some tips and topics and strategies that will be transformative.
I have had the opportunity to be with you in 2 different events this year, one in like a small group setting. And I left that event or that small group meeting, it was an all-day meeting. I left that and I was like, man, this was so powerful. Jason was with me and he was fired up. And I left, and on the way home, I was like, we're going to have to figure out a way for him to come in and talk to our team, talk to our staff. And
I really appreciate it.
We figured it out. I'm so excited.
I know. Me too.
And then a few months later, you were speaking at an event I was attending, and that was incredible too. You did a run out on the stage, which was hilarious.
You know, what's funny is, it's interesting when it comes to speaking, and this is a business tip, is do what other speakers won't do, or do what other people in your industry won't do, because it's hard to forget different. So you probably remember me running on stage. You may remember some of the tips and ideas, and you may remember the face of other speakers, but you won't have that necessarily that distinguishing thing like, oh, they did something that I'll never forget. So I was at another event, and I watched all the speakers before me and they were big, pretty big names and stuff, all come from stage left. So I asked the host, I said, can I sit in the middle of the audience when you call me? And they're like, okay. And then what I did was I walked down. It was a theater style. It was an actual theater. I crawled over the chairs. But what's interesting is the second I started doing this, people started helping me and they almost started to carry me down. And my point was, if you do different, you're willing to do it, it's a little scary inside. People will never forget. And that still comes up. That's how they open their video for this conference, like the most amazing conference ever. And you see me crawling over steps or over chairs. So different works.
Oh man. Well, I'm excited for you to make an entrance at our event.
I got to think I better think of a good one.
All right, I'm so excited to talk about All In Team. So you are writing a book called All In, basically around teamwork. And this is such an important topic because as most of our audience, CrossFit affiliate owners or just different gym owners, they start being the marketer, the coach, the cleaner, the everything. Yep. And then you start adding people to your team. And some people do this thing where it's like amazing. You've got a team that you're like, this is awesome. I'm thriving. And then you've got other people that are like, oh man, my team is rowing in different directions. We're going in circles. We're all disengaged. What are some of the common things that cause that to happen? Like, what are the differences?
Yeah, well, I'll give you one right out of the get-go is if you force people to comply, they will seek to defy. It's wired in human nature, meaning rules and regulations actually cause us to find ways around them. The classic example I use is like with rental cars. Nicole, you've rented cars. And, when you rent a car, you pull up to I call it the DMZ, where the sirens are going off, there's lights, you got to show your ID 100 times so you can take your Prius out the gate. But the second you get out there, if you're like me, I floor it, see how fast this little high brake can go. I skid into lights. I abuse the car because they tell me, you got to return with no scratches, clean car, a full tank of gas. There's all this compliance requirements and penalties if I don't comply, and therefore I'll seek to defy. So great leaders don't force compliance. They definitely have rules and regulations, but they allow the people to express themselves. So the other little rhyme I have is if you help people through nourishment, they will achieve flourishment. They'll grow. And here's the greatest way to nourish your team. Realize that the objective you have for your gym, the revenue objectives, the member objectives, all those KPIs are the dream of yours. I mean, it's what you want as the business owner. And that's magnificent, but it's not the dream of your team. They have their own vision of what they want for themselves. So my own little business here, I have 8 employees at this office. One person is buying their first house. Another person is literally just moving to an apartment today and is excited about furnishing it. Another person is learning Spanish. Another person is pursuing clinical psychology and she's starting her master's program. What we need to do as leaders is embrace those individual visions our colleagues have and support them. I'm not saying financially, but just encourage them to flourish, nourish that because they will flourish. And what will happen is when you encourage their own personal aspirations, it is through human reciprocity will encourage the aspiration of the business. And what I suggest is it's basically walking arm in arm with each other. You're achieving your goals, and this is simply a pathway to support that. And as a result, you're going to support my goals, which is revenue and so forth. So those are a couple things you can do.
So what I'm hearing is gym owners need to be meeting with their employees one-on-one to find out what are you wanting? What does success look like for you outside of just checking all the boxes in my business?
100%. Yeah. And you nailed it with one-on-ones. We do weekly one-on-one meetings at our office. And when we first started considering this, I'm like, this sounds like such overwhelm. It's probably better just to meet once a year during the annual review, fix what's not working and so forth.
Oh,
right. That's the strategy we're using. And it's the worst strategy because with those annual meetings, all of the problems are kind of accumulated. And now I'm trying to fix a year, going back a full year, and it requires major adjustments. There's an expectation around the salary requirements. So there's usually, they're trying to do some stuff to negotiate that. When we started weekly one-on-one meetings, we simply said, hey, this is a check-in. How's life going? How are your personal dreams going? And it does take time. In the beginning, when we were doing these meetings, it was a little formulaic. People didn't feel comfortable. They were a little skeptical. But I would say within a month or two, people are like, oh yeah, I really am excited about, learning Spanish. So I document it, or we have another person that does the one-on-ones too. We document it, and then we bring it up. Say, hey, you were talking about Spanish. How's that going? The manifestation of this, by the way, is right outside my office is we have a tree that's on our wall. And when I say it's a tree, it's made out of wallpaper, but it's designed like a big tree, barren of leaves. When we sit down and do the one-on-ones and we collect all of these individual dreams and visions people have, we also give them a leaf. And we say, the second you achieve that, I want you writing down the dream you had that you've achieved. I've learned Spanish, or I made that trip. I wanted to go somewhere. I moved into my new apartment and furnished it. And when you do that, we as a group are going to put it on the wall to celebrate you. Well, we have this tree that is just blooming in abundance with all these individual dreams. It's a great way to publicly acknowledge and support what people want. And it's not some kind of kumbaya. Now the team is motivated to support the company because the company is supporting them.
Yeah, you're increasing buy-in because you're letting people know that you care about them beyond the objectives that you want in your business. I love that.
You care for them, they'll care for you.
I love that. All right, let's talk about some employees that you might have that are like, oh, I don't know, they're doing the bare minimum. What are some things like, I think what you just said, one-on-ones, any other tips you might have for employees that maybe are just skating by?
Yeah. So there's a classification that we all hear about: A players, B players, C players. And I want to bust a myth here. When I go to conferences now, I regularly ask people who in the room, these are business owners, who in the room is A players? And I would say all the hands are pretty close to a go up. And I acknowledge that to be true. I then ask the same group, I say, well, what percentage of the population are A players? And usually the response, Nicole, is like, 5%, 10%. And like, if 10% of the population are A players and all of us are A players here, this is kind of some kind of statistical anomaly. There's some kind of warp in the universe here, or there's a disconnect. And the reality is, I believe everyone in that room is an A player because they have freedom of choice. They have control over their own destiny. They're able to build around what gives them joy and satisfaction. So I can make modifications. I've that personalization ability. And I know what I'm doing. The more control I have over the outcome or the output I have, and the more knowledge I have around it, the more I feel empowered. Well, those elements are called psychological ownership. When you have intimate knowledge about what you're doing, when you can personalize what you're doing, and when you can control the outcome, we become very vested in it, and we usually perform our best. Now, the C players of the world generally don't have that. So what I suggest is, if you have someone that's not performing well, can we deploy what's called psychological ownership? And there's something really interesting about this, is when we deploy it, people start stepping into a greater self. Here's an example back to cars. The rental car we abuse because we don't own it. But the car you own, the one in your driveway, you likely treat it differently than a rental car. You probably don't jam on the gas pedal and skid into stoplights. You probably don't do donuts with it unless it was designed for that. My own car, I just did like a 400-mile drive. And at the end of it, I literally patted it on the dashboard and said, good connection to my vehicle, a love for it, if you will. So the most fascinating part, though, is I actually don't own my car. The bank owns it. I'm making installments or payments to the bank. Mm-hmm. The lesson is this, that you don't have to give people actual equity in your business. You can still give them ownership. So how do you do this? Well, one is pick the areas where you want someone to own. So maybe you want someone maintaining the equipment, one of your trainers. Say, hey, this is your equipment. You own it. And what I mean by this is you decide how you want to maintain it. You decide how to even personalize it. Maybe you give the equipment names, like this is called Susie and this is Mark, and I give every piece of equipment a name. When you give people that ability to control how they do something, to personalize in the way they want, and over time gain knowledge of what they're doing, they'll feel more and more ownership. Then we, as the business owner, have to reward or acknowledge how they're doing in their ownership of something. This is different than responsibility. Responsibility is where it's, here's what you need to do, And if you do it, thumbs up. And if you fail to do it, thumbs down. Ownership is, here is an outcome I'm hoping to achieve with you, but I want to put in your domain and you determine the outcome. That freedom of controlling the outcome gives a greater sense of ownership. Now, the technique with C players is don't go big first. Don't say, you're cleaning equipment. Pick one machine that they're going to be maintaining. Start off small, sign ownership, watch how they do, reward and acknowledge, then start expanding that sense of ownership. That's called psychological ownership, and that can convert C players to Bs to perhaps As even.
I love that. So psychological ownership, if someone, let's say we gave them the equipment and you're like, oh, I don't know. There's some type of control that we like to have as owners, like, is this done? What's the difference between, is this done well enough, or is this done up to the way you would want it to be done?
They have to set the standard and then you have to agree to it, as opposed to the reverse. So usually it's, this equipment needs to be cleaned once a day and I can't be any dust on anything and it needs to be properly oiled. And if it's not, here's the consequence. Instead, what we do is we go to the person that that's going to have ownership and say, I need someone to own the equipment here to maintain it. Is this something you want to own? So first of all, give them the freedom of choice. If not, okay. Now they may say no to enough things that they're not a fit and they've knowed their way out of the business. But if they say yes, then you say, what is the standard for your ownership? What do you want to see as our standard? And let them set it. What's so interesting is when we create an idea, because we've created it, we actually have ownership over our idea. We have control, we've generated it, we've personalized it because we've made the decisions around it. So let your employee determine the outcome. If it's unsatisfactory, saying, you know what, that's a standard that doesn't fit what I see for the company. Maybe this is something you shouldn't own here. What do you want to own? And quickly, they'll find a spot where they'll meet your standards or not. And if they can't, and they won't, they're not a fit. The most surprising thing is when I flip the script, as opposed to me saying, here's the standards, and ask, what's the standards you want? Inevitably, people set standards higher than I would even set for myself. And now, because they created it, I can say, I'm going to track this and make sure that you're achieving the standard that you set. Is that the best way to do this? Is that fair? Yes. And that's how you do it. Assign them the task, if you will, of determining the standard that they should live to.
And then there's a piece of the follow-up, reward and acknowledge you mentioned, but like following up, okay, is this actually getting done to the standard that you set for yourself as an employee of the business?
Yeah. And now the beauty is you're doing weekly one-on-ones. So these check-ins are like, hey, how's life going? How you doing on those dreams of yours? Hey, there's a few things you own here. I'm proud that you've owned the maintenance of our equipment. Tell me how it's going. And now you have a weekly check-in on it. And you can say, listen, I walked around, I observed, you nailed it here, you failed there. And you can use the sandwich technique. The sandwich technique is where it's, the bread, but the meat's in the middle. So you start off with, hey, I love what you've done in a couple of these machines. Actually, even some of our customers have noticed how cleanly our space is now. And I've also noticed there's a few machines in this section that are getting a little more use or a lot more use and are not maintained to the standard that you were setting. I know you have a high standard based upon the other stuff. That's the other piece of bread. What should we do about this, not failure, but this point where you're struggling? And that's how you coach them through it. As opposed to, that traditional draconian kind of approach, like this piece of equipment sucks. Yeah, we ignore the good stuff. We're like, this sucks. You got to fix this or there's going to be problems. That command control kind of approach is far less effective in all the research I've been reading, studying, and deploying.
I love it. Okay, one more question scenario that I want to bring up, and then we'll shift gears to like the A team players and all the fun stuff. Let's pretend there's a gym owner, and I actually just talked to a gym owner yesterday, and they were talking about how they have a staff member who, a coach at their gym, is not on the same page, constantly questioning like their decisions that they make as an owner leading the company, and potentially even talking poorly about this person to other team members. And it's just kind of fostering this environment that's not propelling them forward. It's probably causing him to take a few steps back. I talked to him about it, and he just was like super nervous letting someone go that might impact the relationships, with CrossFit specifically, coaches have relationships with members. So what are some tips maybe that you would have for a gym owner that's like, I know this person is not the best fit
Yeah.
for our organization?
Yeah. So sometimes not letting someone go is the most costly mistake you'll make. And it's very common with entrepreneurs. We're afraid to do it. So we're like, well, keep them on a little longer. Maybe they'll improve. But someone who's cancerous, that starts to spread. From their perspective, they're dissatisfied with something. It may not even be at the CrossFit gym, it may be outside their life, and you're just the outlet for it. But for them to feel comfortable in their disappointment, they need to get other people disappointed. So they try to rally people around them. Often they'll be a spokesperson for disappointment too. They'll come to the boss and say, you know what, no one here is happy with such and such. They're actually just voicing their own opinion and trying to be representative of a group. So that group is in a sticky situation. They have a colleague who's trying to pull them into the dark side, if you will, yet they're trying to serve the company. They are usually so grateful when that person is let go so they can return to their normal. So keeping someone on is very dangerous. That's not a fit. It does require a hard conversation. And again, you have these one-on-ones and you say, what's going on? How's things going? Now they may put on a facade and say, everything's great. Life is great. How's things working here for you? Everything's amazing. Well, that's not to be true. Say, you know what? It's funny. Your behavior doesn't indicate that. And it's never point out another employee like, Susie Q said that you're saying stuff, saying, I'm getting a sense or a vibe that you're not happy here. I can see it in conversations you have with people. And it just seems like everyone's down when we're having a conversation. What's going on there? Showing them that you have an awareness of it could sometimes be a wake-up call they need and a shock factor. Sometimes you have to go even harder and say, listen, we have people that are being affected by this. I can feel it in the culture. And if you can't help us correct this, you can't be with the organization. And sometimes you have to be that strict and give them a time frame. Document everything. Always document. After you have a conversation, write it down. I even specify corrective action if that's necessary, saying, here's what you need to do. You're expected to be a champion for the company. You're expected to be a champion for employees. A negative vibe around you pulls down our performance as an organization. Our members are even affected by that. It's a drip down effect. So what you need to do is come in with a positive attitude. I expect you to say supportive things. And if you're unable or unwilling to do that, that's understood, but you can't be with the organization, document it, give it to them so they know how serious you are. I was talking with attorneys and lawyers and all these different folks as I was writing the book on the proper way to terminate. And one lawyer, her name was Nancy Green, shared something that was so concise, but it was the eye-opener for me. She said, no one should ever be surprised by a termination. No one should be surprised by a termination, meaning that you've prepared accordingly. Now, I know the cost is I may lose some customers and so forth. Yeah, there can be short-term consequences and a little gut punch, but keeping a cancer around can destroy an organization. You could lose everything by trying to save just that one employee.
Could not agree more with everything you said. I love the tough conversations. I love having the consequences, writing it down, having them take it back with them. Those are all really good tips. There was a book that I was recommended to read called Necessary Endings. Our pastor, actually, I was struggling at some point with an employee years ago, and he was like, read this book. And it was really eye-opening, saying like, hey, yes, you're doing this for the organization, but you're also doing it and it's going to help the other person so that they can ultimately feel more fulfilled and do what they're called to do in life. And this is a chapter and you need to move to the next chapter, essentially.
Yeah, that's the ultimate exit technique, is saying, hey, you just don't seem happy here. And I can see it in your performance. If you could do anything on this planet, anything was available to you, what would that be? And you move them back to that dream and vision they have. And then sometimes we can facilitate it. We had our own experience here. My personal assistant, her name was Lisa, did a adequate job, but it clearly was not her talent. She was not cancerous to the organization whatsoever, but it was not her talent. And there was missed schedules and errors and so forth. So we had to sit down one day and said, hey, if you could do anything on the planet, what would it be? She says, actually, I want to be a firefighter one day. She'd volunteered as a firefighter. And what we noticed is she wasn't good at scheduling. She was great at emergencies. So when there was a last minute panic, that's when she was on her game. I'm like, oh my God, we're trapping a firefighter in a scheduling job here at the office. We need to encourage that. And we didn't find her a firefighting job, but we started giving her time saying, why don't you go out, seek that opportunity for you? And during that, we need to bring in someone that's a scheduler for us that can work in the long-term detailed stuff. It's how we found Erin. So she started cross-training the new person. And sure enough, today she lives in Georgia working for an airport as a firefighter.
Oh, that's amazing. And you were able to say like, hey, it's okay. We don't have to have a bad ending here. It's going to help you fulfill your dreams. All right, let's shift gears. We've got a few minutes that I want to just talk about A players. How do you reward those people? How do you like foster this environment that you've got all A players that you're just so excited to connect with all of them and you know that everyone's leveling up together?
Yeah, for how I categorize ABC is A players see their role in your business as part of their identity. B players see their role in your business as part of their income. C players see their role in your business as a necessity, an evil necessity, and therefore you're evil. So that's kind of how I compare it. The A players are using the business to be a full expression of themselves. And it's usually the acknowledgement of that. Now, people receive acknowledgement in different ways. Sometimes it's verbal acknowledgement. Other times it's recognition through gifts, awards, stuff like that. Doing something for them, maybe having a car detailer come while they're at work, you get the cars detailed for them. So I invite you to observe how A players are interacting with each other and how they acknowledge each other. That's the same form you should acknowledge them. So if one of your team members always is complimenting other people, they actually like to get compliments. If you see one team member going out of their way to do something for someone else, they like those acts of service, and maybe they're the one you should get their car detailed. So regularly doing that. Public recognition is generally a good thing. Not everyone likes that, but generally A players like that too. So when I have team meetings, what I'll do is go through, and it has to be specific, but I'll say, hey, I noticed last week that there was a member who came in an hour late. It messed with everyone's schedule, but so-and-so stepped in and just took care of this. That's a big deal for our company. It's a big deal for that member. Kudos. So public recognition is another one. And the last thing is you can ultimately pay A players more than the industry standard. If I have an A player leave my company, I never want it to be over salary. But the thing I think is like, I can't afford paying tons of salaries. The reality is one A player employee, if you will, can perform at the level of 2, 3, or even 4 B players, and they can crush the C players who are negative nannies anyway. So by having a smaller team and paying them more per person when they're A players, I found to be far superior than trying to mix in B players and C players and keeping salaries low.
Wow. Fire hose of amazing tips to foster an environment with A players. Let's just talk a little bit. Where can people find you in regards to social media, website? You've got a few books. I absolutely love The Pumpkin Plan. Read it every single year. Like that is one of the books that I will read every year and
I love it.
Take away something different. You have Profit First. That is a incredible book for small business owners. You are in the business, you need to make a profit. So if you're struggling financially, and if you're not, and you're looking to increase profit, go read Profit First. But now we've got All In. When does it come out? How can people find the book?
Yeah. So All In is at any bookstore. Amazon, of course, has it. All In, just put Mike after it because there's a few books called All In. But if you put an All In by Mike, you'll find it right away. It's how great leaders build unstoppable teams. It's available January 2nd it'll be shipping on January 2nd, but you can pre-order it today. All of that content, my books are up here on the tree here, but you can get information about all those books plus free chapter downloads at mikemotorbike.com, nickname from grade school. Michalowicz is too hard to spell, but if you go to Mike Motorbike as a motorcycle, you'll get all that information for free.
Amazing. And we'll put the links in the show notes for people to grab the links, pre-order the book. I'm positive it's going to be an incredible book because all of your other books are amazing. And people have an opportunity to connect with you at the Gym Accelerator Summit in person because we are going to have so much fun in a push-up contest. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I want to be in the push-up contest, send me a message on Instagram and we'll get a team going. It's going to be awesome.
Let's do it. Thanks, Nicole.
All right. Thank you so much. Wow, what an awesome podcast episode. If you loved this virtual session, this episode, you are going to love hearing his keynote in Nashville, Tennessee for the Gym Accelerator Summit. You don't want to miss this live event where we're focusing all around bridging the gap between fitness and health inside of the gym. Make sure you click the link in the show notes to grab a ticket today. All right, what was my biggest takeaway? Gosh, there were so many, having those tough conversations. I loved that he talked about investing in your employees and understanding what are they wanting for themselves personally, just outside of your gym. If you're to think about all of your employees, do you know what they're actually wanting outside of the roles and tasks that they have in your facility? I think it's a really great, powerful question that we can also provide accountability and support for our employees. I also loved how he defined A, B, and C players. When you think of your team members, how many of them identify with the business? Like it is a part of them. How many of them are just doing this for income and how many of them are doing this for necessity? Gosh, I want a team of A players. So excited for Mike Michalowicz to come to the Gym Accelerator Summit so we could take a deeper dive into this topic and so many more. I hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you loved it, please leave us a review so this podcast can reach more people. We'll see you back here next week.